Hi friends, it's a beautiful sunshiny day here. Remember that I read a few days before you actually get the video. So I'm reading Storm Runners, The Surge, which is the second in the series by Roald Dahl, and I'm reading it with permission by Scholastic. So we are in the second quadrant and we're working on gathering information. It's 5:41 a.m. John Masters crawled on his stomach, playing out the steel cable from the power winch bolted to the front of Tomas's truck, which was still precariously balanced on its side on an old railroad bridge. Winch trucks are pretty fascinating if you want to do some research on that. Cindy and Mark had crept ahead to the end of the trestle and were crouched behind an uprooted tree in a futile attempt to stay out of the vicious wind. Futile means it's not working. Have you done anything that's futile that doesn't work? The only person who was out of the wind was Tomas. He was behind the steering wheel, waiting for his partner to right the truck. Engines were not designed to operate sideways. Someone had to stay in the cab and play with the accelerator to keep the engine idling and to keep it from stopping. John had once again offered to spell him from behind the wheel, and once again Tomas had refused, adding in Spanglish that he would be grateful if John could get the truck to tip onto the tracks rather than into the swamp. John was doing his best. The water was rising quickly. It had almost reached the bottom of the ties, the railroad ties. John hoped he had the cable angles figured correctly. He fished the hook under the second rail, attached it back onto the cable, and crawled back to the truck and spoke to Tomas through the smashed windshield. "You ready, amigo?" "Minute," Thomas said. He pulled the last two photographs of his family off the dash and put them with the others in a Ziploc bag. "See, I'm ready. When I get it righted, drive forward just enough to loosen the slack. I'll spool the cable and jump in the cab." "Vaya con Dios," Tomas said. "Gracias," John replied. He started the winch. "Are you sure the camera's safe?" Mark asked. "Strapped in like a toddler," Cindy answered as she watched John's headlamp bobbing around the tracks in the dark and the two truck headlights vertical rather than horizontal. "You really think we can make a living going freelance?" "You mean if we live through this storm?" "Right. Well, it won't be easy, but I think we can make a living eventually." "And you think John Masters is a worthy subject of a documentary?" "Maybe," Cindy said. "We'll have to see how the story develops. You have to admit it's pretty dramatic so far." "I've never been more scared in my life," Mark said, "if that's what you mean." "Me too," Cindy admitted. "I don't think I would have tagged along if I'd known how bad this hurricane was going to be. Yet John and Tomas don't appear to be worried." "That's because they're insane," Mark said. "You've got a point, but they've managed to keep us alive so far." "So far," Mark said, "but if we don't get out of here soon, we'll be swimming to the highway. Did I mention that I can't swim?" "Just a few dozen times." "Look," Cindy said, "the headlights are horizontal." So when the truck was flipped over, the headlights were vertical, and when it flipped them right, it was horizontal. "Yeah," Mark said, "but are they right side up?" John Masters let out a sigh of relief as Tomas drove the truck forward to give him enough slack to unhook the cable. He spooled it up and climbed into the cab. Inside, Tomas was reattaching his family to the dashboard. 5:48 a.m. And when it's that close of a time, from 5:41 to 5:48, then sometimes I guess that they'll be switching back to the next group, but maybe not. To see. "You can't go out there alone," Nicole insisted. She had followed Chase to the door at the far end of the barn. "Believe me," Chase said, "I don't want to go out there whether it's with you or without you, but I don't see any other choice. You and Mama Rossi said there could be a problem if Pet has her cat in the dark." "A 225-pound problem," Nicole said. "That's how much a baby elephant weighs when it's born?" "Give or take a few pounds." "We need light," Chase said. "Let me get the gas," Nicole said. "I know the farm a lot better than you do." "But you don't know the shop." "Back to my original argument," Nicole said. "We should both go." Chase didn't like it, but Nicole had a good point. He'd only been on the Rossi farm a day before the hurricane struck. He was certain he could find the building they had parked their rigs, but if he ran into trouble getting there or getting back, Nicole would have a better idea about how to get around the problem. "And there's Hector," Nicole added. Chase had forgotten about Hector, or perhaps he had intentionally put him out of his mind. Having an aggressive leopard running loose was something he didn't really want to think about. "What are the chances of running into him?" Chase asked. Nicole shrugged her shoulders. "Hard to say. With luck, he might be hunkered down somewhere waiting the storm out." "And eating poco," Chase added. "Unfortunately, that meal is probably long over." "What could you do that I couldn't do if I was so unlucky enough as to run into Hector?" Chase said. "Hector's not the only reason I want to go with you," Nicole said. "I need to check on the other animals. If Hector's out, it's a good chance that there are other animals loose too." Suddenly, sitting in a dark barn with a pregnant elephant seemed like a lot better idea to Chase. "What are the chances of Pet having her calf in the next few hours?" "Good, according to Mama Rossi," Nicole answered, "and she thinks there's a very good chance that Pet isn't going to take care of her calf." "These are not ideal circumstances to have your first baby. If there's a problem, we'll have to catch the calf and take it away so it doesn't get stepped on." "Hard to do in the dark," Chase said. "Hard to do in the light," Nicole pointed out. "Wait here." "Where are you going?" "I have to get something from the bunkhouse." She hurried away. While he waited, Chase slowly turned the door handle, expecting the door to fly open and hit him in the face. It didn't. Cautiously, he peered out into the darkness with his headlamp and was pleased to see the downwind side was calm compared to the opposite end of the circus barn. They wouldn't have to worry about WPPs until they stepped out from the shelter of the wall. Remember, that's weird projectiles flying. I don't remember all the WPPs, but it's short for weird perilous projectiles, which means things flying through the air that shouldn't be. There was a lot of water buildup on his left, the same direction they'd have to travel to reach the barn where the shack and shop was parked. Between the shack and shop and the circus barn were two other barns, one of which was the barn where Hector used to live. Chase's father had taught him hundreds of survival techniques over the past couple of years, but how to survive a leopard attack was not one of them. Chase slowly scanned the wind-blown darkness with his headlamp, hoping to see the four-wheeler with its precious load of fuel. There was no sign of it. He was kicking himself for not having had the sense to put it inside the barn when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He ducked back inside and closed the door. "How is it out there?" Nicole asked. "Not as bad as it is on the other end," Chase answered as he shook the rain out of his hair. "I should have at least tied the four-wheeler down. There was plenty of time before the wind started up again after the eye." "You couldn't have known it would be buried or blown away," Nicole said. "I should have known." He turned and looked at her. "Is that a shotgun?" Nicole said, "with 12-gauge double-aught shells just in case." "In case of what?" "In case of Hector." "Do you know how to use that thing?" Nicole pumped a shell into the breech. "Yes, I do, but I hope I don't have to use it." She reached behind her back and pulled out a pistol. "If we run into Hector, I'd prefer to use this, but he may not give us a chance. It's a tranquilizer pistol. I think it'll fit into one of your cargo pockets. The safety's on. It won't go off." This is something you should never do. Nicole had special training with these guns because she's working with the big animals. That's not something that we would do. And even she said that she would rather use the tranquilizer gun, and a tranquilizer is medicine that will put the animal to sleep. So what it does is it shoots a dart into the animal that releases the medicine that puts the animal to sleep. So what she's saying is the safety in the gun is off, so if you put it in your pocket, you won't accidentally tranquilize yourself, which is important. "I'm glad to hear that." Chase put the pistol in his pocket. "Mama Rossi won't want me to go," Nicole said, "so I'm not going to tell her until just before we head out." "I don't want you to go either," Chase said. "I'm going. Ready?" Chase turned the handle. "I'm going with Chase to get gas," Nicole shouted over her shoulder as they stepped out into Hurricane Emily. "Big surprise," Mama Rossi said after the door closed. "I knew she was going too," Rashawn said. Mama fixed her dark eyes on Rashawn. "Now that we're alone, you tell me what you and Nicole and Chase are keeping from me." Reluctantly, Rashawn told her about Poco and Hector. "Poor little Poco," Mama Rossi said. "I didn't see that coming." "I'm sorry about your monkey," Rashawn said. "Exactly where did you see Hector?" I can't say exactly because I've never been here before, but it wasn't far from the gate we came through. He's headed the same way we were going, but we were faster than on the four-wheeler. He was probably looking for shelter just like you were, Mama Rossi said. What do you mean you didn't see that coming? Rashawn asked. My mother and her mother had the second sight, and it was passed on to me, Mama Rossi answered. Their sight was much clearer than mine. So you're a psychic? Mama Rossi smiled. Part-time, and I'm afraid I'm not very talented at it. Chase said that you knew Hurricane Emily was going to get your house. Knew is too strong of a word. Had I known, I wouldn't have been inside the house when the wind started to take it apart. I would have put Poco in a crate so he couldn't have run out the front door when we escaped. I would have known that Hector was on the loose. 5:52 a.m. Stay next to the wall, Chase shouted. I'll lead us to the edge of the building and then you can take over. The barn protected them from the brunt of the savage wind, but it was still strong enough to knock them down if they weren't careful. There's a lot of water, Nicole said. I know. I'm worried about it. It looked like the barn was on the bank of a flooding river. Chase bent closer to Nicole. The only higher ground than this is where your house is, or was. What's behind the house? Woods, Nicole answered, and a lake. Chase hadn't seen the lake the day before. That explained where the water was coming from. How big is it? Big, but it's never overflown before, and our family has lived here for 70 years. It's flooding now, Chase thought, big time. He visualized the lay of the land, thinking back to the tour Nicole had given him on his arrival just 2 days earlier. The road to the farm was below them, which meant it was probably swamped with water running down into the other lake, where their school bus had sunk. His father and Tomas were not going to have an easy time getting to the farm. Chase and Nicole inched their way along the wall to where Chase hoped they'd find the four-wheeler around the corner of the building. What they found instead was a dead giraffe. Gertrude, Nicole shouted above the howling wind. Chase had seen a lot of bad things in the past couple of years, but the dead giraffe was the worst. Nicole waded out and put her arms around Gertrude's long neck, totally ignoring the wind and flying debris. Hesitantly, Chase joined her. He felt bad about Gertrude, but now was not the time for either of them to pay their last respects. He needed to get Nicole out of there. I'm sorry about Gertrude, Chase said, but we can't stay here. We have to move. He glanced to his left, just in time to see the farmhouse's heavy front door and frame cartwheeling its way directly at them. He grabbed Nicole by the arm and yanked her to the side. That was close, Nicole shuddered. Thank you. No problem. Now let's get out of here before the next WPP comes barreling down this wind tunnel. Gertrude can't have been dead for very long. Can we talk about Gertrude once we get inside the next building? Sorry. They didn't get very far. Halfway to the second building, they came across a lion. It was not dead.